Hi, everybody. I'm Mary Thissen-Milder, and I'm with the Minnesota Department of Education. I'm the state physical education consultant. Thanks for joining me today to talk about an extremely important topic around how physical educators can help students during the COVID-19 pandemic around a trauma-sensitive environment. So with that, let me get started here. I'll share my screen with you. So thank you again for coming. Today, we are going to talk about the COVID-19 trauma-sensitive guidance for physical education during the 20 to 21 school year. This presentation is grounded by two specific resources: Shape America's School Reentry Considerations for K-12 Health Education, Physical Education, and Physical Activity, as well as the Minnesota Department of Education's Physical Education Guidance for the 2021 school year. Never before has the connection been clearer between education and health than during COVID-19. If we don't prioritize health, teaching and learning will be compromised. We're seeing that play out now. Students are experiencing depression, anxiousness. They may not be getting enough food or physical activity, or may be living in unsafe or unstable housing. These conditions make teaching and learning difficult at best. It's crucial that physical educators not only be aware of this, but understand how to help students navigate through their daily lives by assisting them in making all the health connections critical in providing the foundation for safe and healthy schools and supports for a safe space for learning. Whether the delivery method is in school, distance learning, or hybrid, physical educators should consider three distinct areas of focus when planning curricular units, assessments, and learning activities for students. This presentation addresses the need for teachers to be aware of and plan for student COVID-19 experiences by addressing student needs in equity, inclusion, and accessibility, navigating a trauma-sensitive learning environment, and connecting instruction to social emotional learning competencies. We will then apply these concepts to physical education and provide examples of how SEL competencies are integrated across physical education standards and benchmarks in Minnesota. Unfortunately, the pandemic has increased the equity gap in education and has highlighted disparities in student and teacher access in digital devices, learning materials, and the internet. Physical educators have always been aware that equity, diversity, and inclusion has to be considered when planning curricular units, assessments, and learning activities for their students. Learning expectations have to be adapted to meet students' current conditions. By modifying programming, students of all physical abilities can participate in movement meaningfully. When considering students with 504 or individual educational programs, you can ask yourself key questions in determining needed accommodations. What are your students in school or distance learning needs? If distance learning, do students need closed captioning, their materials ahead of the scheduled meeting time, their sessions recorded or sent to them afterwards? Do they need visual aids, tutorials, or individual virtual meetings? Can any of the accommodations for modifications be used for all your students? And will wearing face coverings impact students' abilities to interpret emotions and facial expressions or their ability to hear speech? When utilizing a distance learning or hybrid model, consider if there's equal access to the internet and a device at home to complete assignments. You should consider for English language learners, how will you make assignments available? How will you communicate with parents or guardians? What additional aids will you need to help students understand assignments? Who can you use as a resource for help in supporting English language learners? How will wearing a face covering impact that learning? Mental health experts anticipate that many students will have experienced trauma related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Students will not be prepared to engage in learning if they don't feel physically and emotionally safe. A trauma-sensitive mindset can be applied to all facets of education, teaching strategies, behavioral management, assessment, and policies. Creating a trauma-sensitive learning environment in physical education will be imperative to help students ease the impact of trauma on their life. Get to know students' pandemic experiences. Stress and trauma can inhibit learning. Meet students where they are and adapt accordingly. Appropriate movement selections can help relieve their stress. Provide opportunities to connect with students and for students to connect with you with things such as office hours, chat times, and one-on-one check-ins. Create a predictable setting and a routine during such things as setting a regular class structure and preparing students for potential upcoming changes with as much lead time as possible. Continuing talking about a trauma-sensitive learning environment, create or keep a chance for student voice, providing opportunities for students to get involved with things such as class norms, ideas for routines or activities, and also provide many opportunities for them to give feedback. Implement restorative practices for issues that evolve to assist in mending relationships. You can find a lot of restorative practices resources on the MDE Restorative Practices webpage. Check with students to see how they are and make adaptations if there are overwhelming feelings of anxiousness expressed through activities such as deep breathing exercises or calming music meditations. Regularly check in with students regarding their needs and what they're doing for self-care. Social emotional learning is broadly understood as a process through which people build awareness and skills in managing emotions, setting goals, establishing relationships, and making responsible decisions that support their success in school and in life. By developing social and emotional skills, abilities of students to form relationships and build social awareness increases, which enhances their abilities to connect with individuals of diverse perspectives, cultures, languages, histories, identities, and abilities. And by implementing social emotional learning on a macro level in schools, more equitable, better performing schools and communities are created. The next slides explore social emotional learning competencies and identify how they are integrated into the Minnesota State Physical Education Standards and grade level benchmarks. There are 5 competencies in the social emotional learning, or from now on, I will just call it the SEL framework. SEL, the framework identified by the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, or CASEL, is utilized by MDE in the state social emotional learning implementation guidance. Integrating SEL into schools helps students learn to be caring and civil, make healthy decisions, problem solve effectively, value excellence, be respectful and responsible, be good citizens, and be empathetic and ethical individuals. The first core competency is self-management, which is the ability to successfully regulate one's emotions, thoughts, and behaviors in different situations, effectively managing stress, controlling impulses, and motivating oneself. The ability to set and work towards personal and academic goals are also part of self-management. The core competency of responsible decision-making is the ability to make constructive choices about personal behavior and social interactions based on ethical standards, safety concerns, and social norms, the realistic evaluation of consequences of various actions, and consideration of the well-being of oneself and others. The SEL core competency of social awareness is the ability to take the perspective of and empathize with others, including those from diverse backgrounds and cultures. The ability to understand social and ethical norms for behavior and to recognize family, school, and community resources and supports. The self-awareness core competency is the ability to accurately recognize one's own emotions, thoughts, and values, and how they influence behavior. The ability to accurately assess one's strengths and limitations with a well-grounded sense of confidence, optimism, and a growth mindset. And the final SEL core competency of relationship skills is the ability to establish and maintain healthy and rewarding relationships with diverse individuals and groups. The ability to communicate clearly, listen well, cooperate with others, resist inappropriate social pressure, and negotiate conflict constructively, and seek and offer help when needed. As stated earlier, social emotional competencies and related skills are integrated into the 2018 physical education standards. The next few slides identify some sample benchmarks across the following physical education standards. Standard 3 in physical education is that students will demonstrate the knowledge and skills to achieve and maintain a health-enhancing level of physical activity and fitness. Standard 4, that students will exhibit responsible personal and social behavior that respects self and others. And Standard 5, students will recognize the value of physical activity for health, enjoyment, challenge, self-expression, and social interaction. The Minnesota Physical Education Standards are organized through organizational categories called focus areas. Each focus area is then broken into grade-specific benchmarks. The easiest way to recognize social emotional competencies is through the focus areas and aligned grade level benchmarks. So this chart provides our first example. This is a Standard 3 example, which again, students will emphasize the ability of students to demonstrate the knowledge and skills necessary to achieve and maintain a health-enhancing level of physical activity and fitness. Under the self-management focus area, the following benchmarks are examples under the self-discipline SEL-related skill. Sixth graders will identify possible causes of stress and the negative effects of stress on health. Seventh graders will identify several strategies for dealing with stress. For example, deep breathing, guided visualization, and aerobic exercise. These benchmarks align with the SEL-related skill of stress management. Again, in Standard 3, SEL core competencies and related skills can be found under the responsible decision-making focus area. Fifth graders will analyze pre- and post-fitness assessment results, compare results to the recommendations for good health, and describe personal strategies to enhance fitness through physical activity participation. This is an SEL-related skill of analyzing situations. And high school students will evaluate risks and safety factors that might affect physical activity preferences through the life cycle. This is an SEL-related skill of reflecting. For Standard 4, in which students exhibit responsible personal and social behavior that respects self and others, SEL core competencies and related skills can be found in the social awareness focus area. Seventh graders accept differences among classmates in physical development, maturation, and varying skill levels by providing encouragement. This is an SEL-related skill for appreciating diversity. Eighth graders cooperate and problem solve with classmates in large group initiatives or gameplay. And ninth graders exhibit proper etiquette, respect for others, and teamwork while engaging in physical activity or social dance. Both of these benchmarks fall under the SEL-related skill of respect for others. And finally, Three more examples of SEL core competencies and related skills under Standard 4 are in the relationship skills focus area. Seventh graders problem solve with a small group of classmates during small group initiatives or gameplay, which is an SEL related skill of social engagement. Eighth graders cooperate and problem solve with classmates in large group initiatives or gameplay, which is an SEL related skill of teamwork. And high school students apply positive communication skills and strategies to the completion of a group task in a physical activity setting, an SEL related skill of communication. In Standard 5, students recognize the value of physical activity for health, enjoyment, challenge, self-expression, and social interaction. SEL core competencies and related skills are found under the self-awareness core focus area. Kindergartners express enjoyment when being physically active, individually and with others. This is an SEL related skill of identifying emotions. Sixth graders recognize individual challenges in physical activity and implement methods of coping with them in a positive way. For example, extending effort, asking for help or feedback, or modifying the task. This is an SEL related skill of accurate self-perception. And eighth graders develop a plan of action and make appropriate decisions based on that plan when faced with an individual or group challenge. This is an SEL related skill of recognizing strengths. Finally, under Standard 5, in the relationship skills focus area, the SEL related skill of social interaction can be found in these benchmarks. Fifth graders analyze physical activities based on their personal levels of enjoyment and opportunities for social interaction and self-expression. And high school students identify the opportunity for social support in a self-selected physical activity or dance. A few more thoughts on SEL. Regardless of the environment, students may move, think, feel, or act differently and may need time to relearn skills. Be patient with them. Students learn best when they feel confident and competent in fundamental movement skills. As much as possible, one-on-one communications with students provide a needed connection that fosters a sense of belonging. Encourage students to be active, provide autonomy for activity selections, use daily routines to incorporate SEL skills. For example, use morning circles or instant activities or warm-ups, introductions, and closures. How can these routines transfer easily if the school were to abruptly change the model for learning, i.e. switch from in-school instruction to distance learning? Teachers should be aware that face coverings may impact students' ability to interpret emotions and facial expressions. Consider how wearing a face covering may limit the ability to interpret student expression and find other ways to interpret them by using other communication signals, such as using a thumbs up action if they like an activity. Work with other school staff members like school counselors, nurses, social workers, psychologists, and other teachers to share SEL specific skills being taught. What specific skills teachers can use that can be used throughout the school building or at home related to SEL, such as deep breathing exercises, moments of pause, zones of regulation, emotional check-ins, and rating scales. Are the SEL skills others can use to incorporate into your activities? Prepare for emotional, social, and skill regression. How can you prepare for students who may demonstrate a lack of social skills, which may not be intended or a sign of disobedience due to physical distancing? Analyze the new school environment and its impact on students. What does the school day look like now with physical distancing measures in place? Are students staying within their own classrooms most of the day? Are there limited times to use the restroom? How will they use new routines and logistics, and how will they impact students' social and emotional needs? That is, are they experiencing higher levels of stress, angst caused by staying in the same class for long periods of time, frustrations over wearing face coverings, or fear of getting sick? What behavior interventions can you plan for response to misbehaviors caused by new routines or logistics? Integrate social emotional learning skills and competencies through all physical education programming. This presentation addressed the need for physical educators to not only be aware of, but to implement instructional practices related to equity, inclusion, and accessibility, navigating a trauma-centered learning environment, and the importance of integrating social emotional learning in all learning models. It also provided examples of how social emotional competencies are integrated across physical education standards and benchmarks in Minnesota. Thank you for your time today. I wish you all the best in your teaching. Take care of yourselves and remember, as long as we're experiencing the COVID-19 pandemic, stay home if you're sick and encourage your students to do the same. Encourage everyone to wear a mask and incorporate physical distancing into your classes. Thanks, everyone. That's the presentation for today. I'm wishing you all the best and sign off. Thanks, everyone.